Welcome to the Health Data Ethics Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Owens, and this week we have an interview with my friend Kylen Bailey, and I'm so excited to have him on. Kylen and I go way back. We've worked together on several projects, but you have a new role. Actually, probably not so new now at this point. Tell me a little bit about your new organization and talk to me about what you're doing with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. I know we've gotten to work quite a lot together over the last few years, so excited to do so with my new organization, Clarium, and in my new role of Executive Director of Growth at Clarium. And so essentially, Clarium is an AI platform specific for healthcare supply chains. So we are really in many ways a large integration system that pulls in information from a variety of different places, including supply chains, beloved Excel spreadsheets, and many other platforms like EHRs, ERPs, UMS, and all the fun acronyms. But we essentially have built a platform that connects a lot of different siloed systems inside the healthcare supply chain space that historically have never been connected. Utilize that information using our own AI to help bring insights to supply chain teams across healthcare organizations throughout the country. And our ability to do so has prompted us to work with great organizations like the Cleveland Clinic, of course, Common Spirit, Kaiser Permanente, and some others who have helped us really lay the foundation for what we believe is a total shift in technology, especially in the supply chain space where historically maybe has not been quite as served as some of the other areas inside of healthcare.
So I'm a little bit biased here because I end up working quite closely with our supply chain folks, and I couldn't agree more that there really are opportunities. Talk to me about what this actually means. So you're talking about pulling information in from multiple places. If I were on the podcast, I often use Jenny's Totally Fictional Hospital as an example. So if my totally fictional hospital were to partner with Clarium, where would you be looking to pull information from, and what would you be delivering to me in the early days of our engagement?
Yeah, I mean, it's only right on the Data Ethics Podcast. We talk about data, right? So right off the bat, where does most data live? It's typically the EHR, quickly followed by the ERP. Those are two of the largest areas for information. So we want to make sure that we're pulling information there and where applicable based off of the product, pushing information back into there. Like I also mentioned kind of at the beginning of this, there are a lot of different Excel sheets that are still used by supply chain teams, and not to mention the fax machine and other things that scare us. But there's quite a lot of data floating around there and a lot of different teams and a lot of different platforms. So our ability to pull information, such as information based off of your suppliers. So if you're using, let's say, a distributor like Medline or Cardinal Health or Owens & Minor, et cetera, there is a ton of information with those distributors on supplies that are either being affected by a disruption or not. Well, let's say I know a disruption is happening. I need to be able to pull information on what a valid substitute is going to be so that I don't miss the surgeries that I have scheduled coming up. Being able to pull from any different platform is what really makes Clarium special. Being system agnostic allows you to connect people, connect systems that historically aren't. And so our ability to work very closely with health systems to understand where does your data sit today? Are you, let's say, technologically advanced and able to have a data lake within AWS or Google Cloud or Snowflake or what have you. We want to work with you to understand where does your data sit, because every single healthcare organization is different. We want to be able to action and pull that information and use that to ultimately surface those insights to the appropriate members across your supply chain and operational efficiency teams. Kind of really directly to your question, the data sits in so many different areas, and to stay on the topic of data-rich environment, supply chain teams in particular, they just have so much data at their fingertips, but historically it's never been jointed, it's always been siloed. And so we are really trying to bridge that gap.
It's so true, right? There's so much information, but actually laying your hands on the information that matters most is pretty manual sometimes, like trying to assemble things from one system to another. I'm curious to know, so it seems like there would be an immediate efficiency or an immediate, I think of it as like the sigh of relief, right? Like, oh, okay, now I can actually like merge and marry all the information that I need. As you go on with your relationship with the health system, what would you see as far as continued offerings? And then is this strictly a commercial relationship? Do you ever do co-development with your partners?
Yes. The short answer is yes. So actually, with the Cleveland Clinic in particular, we gave a joint presentation on this at a ARM conference in Denver just last month. But essentially, look, we took the first couple months to basically just understand the foundational metrics that we needed to align on and make sure that, okay, if we are going to launch a platform, specifically in making sure that we are optimizing procedure cards and preference cards to their maximum levels, that we would need to make sure that those metrics are aligned from day one. So essentially starting with that. Number two is, again, every health system is extremely different. Their data is different. So understanding, one organization I talked with, their procedure cards were all in one giant printed binder that had a couple of different individuals responsible for updating those on an annual basis. A lot of things happen in 365 days inside of a healthcare system. And so co-development is a very big aspect of what we do. Clarium was started 5 years ago, and it was essentially a lot of co-development in the first few years to understand, okay, we know there are a lot of different operational tasks that are associated with supply chain teams. We need to make sure that we are marrying operations and technology in order to deliver an actual transformative experience. And if we aren't taking in feedback from our partners to understand where their pain points actually are, then we probably aren't doing our job correctly. We are an organization right now of about 50 people. You are an organization at Cleveland Clinic or Common Spirit or any of our large partners where it's thousands and thousands of people with hundreds of thousands, usually millions of different supplies floating around different areas. And so being able to pull that information, again, staying on that theme, and understand the information being given to us by the people on your teams in understanding, okay, maybe we have a bigger hurt in orthopedics than we do in neurology when it comes to preference cards. We want to make sure that we are using a specific column to outline the fact that this distributor, for whatever reason, may not have enough of X, Y, and Z supply that we need. And so being able to get that feedback from our customer teams, co-develop with them to create a new column or create an entirely new feature inside of a product is very fundamental, not only to our success, but ultimately delivering a good experience. So yes, we love to co-develop.
So you called out a couple of things, and I want to get you to expound on them, because you mentioned having an understanding of the differences between the service lines, right? Orthopedics may be different from urology. You also mentioned having really clear lines of communication. We need this column, the information in this column rather than that. I would love to get you to expand more on this. I'm really curious to know, and this is a theme of mine that goes back a ways. When you have a co-development partnership between a health system and a vendor, what does that look like, especially on the supply side of the house? I feel like we have a lot of discussion about clinical tools and maybe not so much discussion about the tools that enable us to use our clinical tools.
Absolutely. So, I think there's a key word that is thrown around quite a lot, but it genuinely could not be more real, is the emphasis on cross-collaboration. So we believe in setting up a type of governance structure relatively early on wherever possible to make sure that we aren't just getting buy-in from end users and supply chain, but as we can imagine, patient care doesn't work without supply chain. They need to have everything that they need going into every visit. And so being able to get not only the supply chain buy-in, but by working with operational efficiency owners, by working with clinical stakeholders, by working with information security and integrations teams, all of those things together have to be joined at the hip, no pun intended, for this to actually work at its maximum ability. And so that governance structure, along with understanding what's happening and setting up reviews of, okay, the product has been deployed for X amount of time. We want to evaluate exactly how much has happened over that period of time. And if we aren't able to do that, then we probably haven't approached the partnership correctly, or there's something missing on one side or the other. And in order for us to do that, we have to have cross collaboration at executive and end user levels from day one, and be able to expand on those over time. So to kind of summarize that, it's a governance structure, even though I know bureaucracy might sound a little tough in some occasions, but making sure truly that we have that buy-in, not just from the supply chain side, but really between different service lines, like you mentioned.
Sure. And having active participation in that governance structure, I would imagine, is really helpful, because once you kind of know the rules of the road, then it makes it easier to say, oh yes, obviously this is an opportunity that we can co-develop quickly, and then you have a communication channel that's already kind of open.
Exactly. And I would expand even a little further on that, in that, like I said, supply chain, historically supply chain teams have to buy technology on behalf of other people inside the business. It's very rare that they're buying for themselves. And so the fact that we are approaching with something that potentially takes on different occasions that I've seen 6 to 10 different point solutions just into one platform is a complete change management problem. And so if we aren't joined very closely in accomplishing that transformational change operationally, then we're
Hmm.
probably going to struggle in actually being able to provide the results that we believe we can do.
All right, so tell me about if I'm a health system who is partnered with you, what sort of resources are you hoping that I will bring so that we can build together faster and drive the kind of engagement that you're looking for?
Yeah, so I think number one, like I said, we have to unify data in order for anything to happen. So if we aren't able to essentially understand, okay, this is the data inside your EHR, here's all the supply waste that we were able to pull in reports out of your ERP, here's the list of distributors that you have and the current technology that you're using. If we can't join all those together and have people from your team that are able to understand, be that subject matter expert, then we're probably going to have a really tough time getting off the ground. There's Lord knows how many different AI implementations that take far too long because they did not set up the partnership from day one correctly and had the understanding, hey, it might take longer to get this thing signed and working together from day one. But if we don't have that cross collaboration, we're just going to waste that time down the road and we're not going to see the implementation timeframes that we want. So, bringing subject matter experts across your operational, supply chain, and data teams is so foundationally important for success. And then I think on the back end of that, once it is implemented, we need to understand who are the operational leaders that are going to help us in the change management process that is the most important aspect to actually seeing the return on investment that you're hoping to see. If we are, let's say, for example, we aren't talking to the value analysis team, and the value analysis team has deep interest in understanding what we are doing together to ultimately reduce the amount of waste and spend happening on different procedure cards throughout the organization, we're probably, again, not going to get to that final result that we want to get to see that operational change and efficiency that we would ultimately hope for. So to kind of summarize that, I think up front, it's those who understand data and systems to help us get to the right places, because in some cases it can be a needle in the haystack. It's not as simple as hooking up a few APIs to your EHR and have a day. It's much more, hey, let's go find those 15 Excel sheets, or let's go find those reports inside of the ERP that no one has ever pulled. So unifying that upfront data exchange and then ultimately seeing through transformational change management is really kind of the end result and the right people to bring.
And that makes perfect sense to me. And I know you and I have talked about my theory that everything is at Excel at the bottom of it. Like literally everything in the world is built off of Microsoft Excel. But you've mentioned one thing a couple of times that I want to dive in a little bit deeper on, and that's the use of data by vendors. In particular, you've mentioned plugging into the EHR. And so I first want to talk about, at Clarium, how are you thinking about safety and security when you're working with really sensitive data? And I know that in healthcare, our sensitive data is not just PHI. We think about first, we think about most, but we also have payment information, we have proprietary and sensitive information. Supply chain in particular has contracting agreements and all sorts of really fascinating, very sensitive stuff.
Yeah, so in my career, as you know, I have bounced around different corners of healthcare systems from a vendor perspective. I have worked on site with revenue cycle teams. I have worked with financial leadership, worked with clinical stakeholders, and really now kind of in the supply chain space inside of healthcare. The types of data that exist in our paramount to day-to-day operations between those different functional areas has a lot of variance, and maybe a little more than people even realize. When, let's say, for example, the hottest space in technology probably right now is ambient listening, there is a ton of PHI and PII involved in that space. The safeguards and the approaches that have to be taken in order to be successful there are pretty different from what they are in supply chain, for example. Good example inside of supply chain right now is the fact that I don't believe that we have really ever had to touch any PHI. It's not really something that is involved in our algorithm construction. It's not really involved in the outputs that change operational flows inside a supply chain. So our approach is foundationally different. Now, if we think about what is sensitive inside of an AI model, it is typically something that is proprietary. Some people like to throw PHI, PII, PCI kind of under that proprietary umbrella. And for the sake of this conversation, let's just do that really quickly. In the supply chain space, what do you think, Jenny, is the actual most sensitive data typically in a supply chain space?
Is it the contracts?
That's up there.
Okay.
And adjacent to that, it would be pricing.
Well,
So,
yes, sure.
yes. So if I were to basically surface, let's say we had pricing information from customer X and customer Y, who is 3 states away, is wondering if they're overpaying for something. If I all of a sudden said, well, I know that my customer over here is paying this much, that's not going to go well. And so that kind of is where our safeguards come into play, is that we aren't using pricing. We're not using specific proprietary data that potentially can be identifying that would ultimately put a customer, their contracts, their relationships in jeopardy because of the fact that we are trying to essentially do something good. We've been able to construct a very modular platform that doesn't necessarily rely on that type of information to be effective.
I mean, that is incredibly reassuring. It's so interesting that I thought contracts immediately because the pricing was so taboo, right? We never discuss pricing ever. Kylen, we're bumping up against our time limit here. I want to be respectful, but I absolutely love this conversation. I would love if we could continue it. Are there questions you want to answer that I haven't asked you? Anything that you want to make sure that people remember about you or about Clarium?
I think what's so important is that with AI platforms in healthcare in particular, it is extremely likely that you are looking at a variety of different platforms that do 1/8, 1/10, whatever it is, of the functionality that a new platform might be able to consolidate. And I've talked with a lot of different health systems over the 2 months that I've been with Clarium, and many of them are saying, we're realizing that we have to do an internal audit. We have to look at everything that we have in place today and understand what potentially can be replaced or improved by the implementation of an AI solution. And so I would just urge, organizations to have an open mind, of course, but also introspectively think about, okay, what are all the things that my team is using today and how can I operationally improve that efficiency while also introducing insights that I probably just didn't know that I didn't know. So that internal introspective audit, whatever you want to call it, is really important as the growth of AI and just bounds and leaps of data that can be actioned on continue to be introduced into the healthcare world.
That's amazing. A very strong takeaway. Kylen, thank you so much for agreeing to appear on the podcast. This has been a great conversation. I truly appreciate your time. And if people want to hear more from you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so feel free to go to our website, clariumhealth.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Kylen Bailey. I try to be active as much as I can, or feel free to send me an email at kylen@clariumhealth.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much.